All right, today we're going to look at our US, Canada, Mexico test that we took a week ago, and we're going to focus on those top 5 questions that were missed by 6th graders here at Jordan. So, we're going to go ahead and look at the first one. So, this was actually question number 2. We are going to read the question first. It says in the excerpt, the United States Constitution is supporting the notion of the of which type of government, okay? So that's the question that we got to go and look at the excerpt. So it says, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. So that's the U.S. Constitution from 1787. Okay, so the main thing we're trying to look at here is we're looking at the US Constitution and we're trying to figure out what type of government it is. Okay, so when we're looking, okay, at our answer choices, we have to figure out which one matches up. A lot of students chose constitutional monarchy because of the idea we saw constitution here. Just because it has a constitution, okay, little part that checks off. But when we have a monarchy, that's a king or queen. And so since we don't have that here in the United States, we're not going to click that. When we look at anarchy, okay, the idea is that there is no government, which we don't have that. We are going to now look at the last 2 answer choices. From here, we have democracy, which means we can vote. Okay, and so since we can vote, the idea is that's something that works. Let's look at our last answer choice first before we make that final decision. Absolute monarchy, again, we have a king or queen listed, which is not the case. And absolute means they have total control. So our government doesn't have total control. So that means we are going to have C be the answer for this one. Okay. So now that we've answered that question, we're going to go ahead and look at question number 3. So for question number 3, we see the question says the list above supports the idea that ... Now we're looking at what is shown above. We see Greek democracy, Roman Republic, Magna Carta, English Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence. The key thing that we want to notice, though, is the idea that we see Greece, Rome, England, right? And then, of course, the United States. So we can infer that there are many places that have been influenced. So let's look at our answers. All of our answer choices talk about this idea of limited government, okay? So when we have limited government, again, that's the idea that the government has limits on what they can do to their citizens, okay? When we look at each individually, we want to see what is true about them or false. So we are looking at this first one. It says it started in Greece. From here, okay, here is Greece, but it's 600 BC, and there was something before that in 500. So we're going to cross that out. And it failed to spread to other places. Well, it spread to other places, Rome, England, United States. So A cannot be our answer. When we look at answer choice B, never existed until 1689 with the English Bill of Rights. Well, as we can look, here is our England example for English Bill of Rights, but there are actually 3 things listed before it in the timeline. Okay, so because of that, we're going to say nope, not the case. When we look at answer choice C, we notice that it says have spread to different countries and have impacted societies. Well, did it spread to other countries? It sure did. We have Greece, Rome, England, United States. And ultimately, it did play a factor in society. So that looks like our possible answer, but let's go ahead and keep going. Ideas of limited government were contained to the continent of Europe. So make sure we notice that US is not a part of Europe, so that cannot be the answer. So our only option is going to be C, right? Because again, it did spread to other countries and they had influence and impact. All right. Now we'll go on to our next question. So the next question that was most missed is this idea of characteristics above, and this is number 4. So when we look here, we're going to highlight some key info as we read. So producers determine the supply or availability of a product. So we look at producers for supply. The opportunity to make a profit drives people to put money at risk, right? And we're trying to make a profit. Consumers determine the demand. So when consumers have the demand, the likelihood of an item being created is there. Because again, the people want to make money, and that's how they make money is by creating items. So when we look here, we're trying to figure out which answer choice works best. Now, let's start at answer choice D. When we have a traditional economy, it's passed down from generation to generation. More so, it's not going to be this one, okay? When we look at a communist economy, that's when the government has total control over this idea, okay? And that is not the case either. So now we're down to free market and economy as well as socialist. Now keep in mind with socialist, there is some government control as well as private citizens having control. So keep in mind that when we look here, free market enterprise is going to be our answer. Okay, so when we talk about free market, we also want to think about free enterprise, and it's the idea that the government, little or no intervention, and that producers and consumers weigh heavily on supply and demand. So because we saw those keywords, supply and demand, we want to think of free market or free enterprise. And I feel like that was one of the reasons why this question was one of the ones that was most missed, was because in class, we typically referred it to free enterprise and not free market. So that might have been tricky. All right. Now we're going on to our next question. It was actually question number 8, and it says the spread of Roman Catholic religion throughout North America was a result of what? So when we look at these percentages, it says the percent of population that identifies as being Roman Catholic. So 39% of Canada's population is Catholic. In the US, it's 20.8%, and in Mexico, it's 82.7%. So looking at those numbers, we do notice that Catholicism is spread throughout the US, Canada, and Mexico countries, right? Now we've got to figure out why. So when we're looking at our answer choices, we want to make sure that we choose the best one. So as we go through, A says the crossing of the land bridge. Okay. Well, they are right next to each other, but let's keep looking to see if there's a better option choice. And B, achievements of Native Americans. Now keep in mind who brought Catholicism to the region, okay? Because it was not here to begin with. When we originally talked about exploration, it was from the Europeans. The Europeans came over to the Americas in search of land to claim for their country. So, our Native Americans didn't have this idea of Catholicism or Christianity. It was coming from the Europeans. So, the only one that makes sense, if we look at the other two, vacations to and from Eastern Europe, or European exploration and colonization. So, the best one that works here is going to be D, because again, the Europeans explored new opportunities in the Americas, and therefore we see that influence within culture. All right, and so now on to the last one. We have number 9. It's looking at the question, the popularity of Dia de los Muertos in the United States is an example of what? So when we look at this, okay, we're looking at what is being represented. So as we read this article, it talks about how the Day of the Dead is traditionally celebrated in Mexico on November 1st and 2nd. Ultimately, it says, over the last several years, a growing number of people of Mexican and other Latin American descent have celebrated Day of the Dead throughout the U.S. The Mexican migration to the States during the 1990s through the early 2000s largely contributed to that. So that's a key idea that throughout the U.S., this migration, so people coming to the United States from these different areas, they're bringing their culture with them, the way that their clothing is, their traditions, their language, their food. They're bringing that all with them when they come to a new country. So, because of that, this is showing an idea of cultural diffusion. And so, again, cultural diffusion is the spreading of culture through technology, travel, trade, those things. So when we look at our answer choices, we don't want to get confused because of the fact that we want to focus on just what was that definition of cultural diffusion, spreading of culture. The other 3 are there as distractors. They're trying to get you to pick them because all of them have cultural. But the only one that we truly had talked about over and over and over in class was cultural diffusion. Okay, so hopefully you got some insight on these 5 missed questions throughout the 6th grade here at Jordan. If you had gotten some of these right, great job. You should pat yourself on the back. Okay, but again, we're always learning, constantly looking at questions and trying to analyze what was the best option. All right. Hope you guys have a great day.